Hello and welcome back into the FCS Huddle. I'm Elliot Schall with the senior editor for Stats, Craig Haley. Now, Craig, we really got going talking about the Missouri Valley Conference. So all these now in-conference play going on in the FCS, some big key matchups. Tell us what other things we can look forward to with the conference play.
Sure. I mean, some conferences are a little farther into their schedules. Some are just getting started. I think Jacksonville State, surprisingly, is they have the jump on everybody. I mean, not really surprisingly, I guess you could say. They're 2-0 within conference, 4-0 overall. They're going to jump back out of conference this week. But overall, I mean, this is the best time of the regular season. I mean, intersectional is great, FBS is great, but these teams know each other and they go back and forth. Southland and SWAC, two other conferences that they're playing 9-game schedules, so they're well into their play or into their regular season as well. It's a great time of the year.
Absolutely, and you talked about Jacksonville State, who's having a great year, and they've had some pretty tough early season matchups. Now, what about some of these teams that have had some non-conference, out of conference, I should say, matchups that have kind of really maybe made them look stronger or some hindered their season a little bit? What can we take away from some of those teams?
Well, that's really been prevalent in the Big Sky. I mean, they're forced to play other area teams because there's not enough teams out there geographically. Eastern Washington came away a little banged up, but they're seems like they have it back together. Montana's also back to 2-2. They both won their conference openers. The team that really was hard hit was Cal Poly. They beat Montana, and then they have 2 losses. They go into conference play, lose immediately to Montana State. That's a team that's got a tough run. They might not make the playoffs just because their schedule was so hard. UNI is one of the teams that beat Cal Poly from Missouri Valley. They came out of their non-conference schedule 2-1, looking strong with 2 top 25 wins. That's when you play a tough schedule, it can get you, or you can do well from it.
Oh, without a doubt. And you look at the FCS Super Conference, a power conference that's obviously kind of had some unbalanced scheduling. How does that kind of stack up to the smaller conferences?
Well, I mean, you don't play everybody in your conference. A conference like the Big Sky has 13 teams. The CA has 12. Most of the times you're playing 8 conference games, but it's kind of unique because some years the schedule helps you, some it doesn't. I mean, for instance, the Missouri Valley, 10 teams, you don't play one opponent. Last year, the 2 national finalists, Illinois State and North Dakota State, didn't play in the regular season.
Right.
They're not playing again this regular season. It's just odd. I mean, UNH, New Hampshire out of the CA, defending champ. They lose some seniors. This year, they're only picked 3rd in the preseason poll. The only 2 teams they're not playing, or the two of the strong teams they're not playing on their schedule in the CA are the 2 teams picked ahead of them.
Yeah.
Villanova, James Madison. It's just, it hurts us as far as wanting to see these matchups. A case like UNH, they needed it because they lost their CAA opener already to Stony Brook. So it's just odd. I mean, you wish you could play everybody, but in larger conferences, it doesn't work that way.
Craig, this is a side note. I'm curious. When you look at some of these matchups, and you look at obviously the records, don't really go with how tough the schedule is. Now, when you're voting in terms of rankings and everything, what do you look at? Because obviously, a 1-3 team versus a 3-0 team, maybe it was Idle versus a team that played Auburn, something like that. A team that plays a powerful FBS school.
Sure.
What goes into your voting?
Great question, Elliot. I think you have to look at schedules, you have to look at results and say, okay, they played a tough team. They played them well. They beat them. They took them down to the wire. You have to factor that in. Then you start, when you're ranking teams, you say, hey, if this team is matched up against this team, if they're 2 different conferences, who wins that game?
Right.
I think you really have to look at the strength of schedule. I always do. I hope voters in the top 25 do. It's just a way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So that's good to know, and especially if you're checking out those rankings on FCS.football. That's where you get everything, all the coverage for the FCS. Be sure to check that out again, FCS.football, and also on Twitter at FCS_stats. And give Craig a follow, as I always say. Great guy to follow, especially on game day, at Craig Haley. That's going to do it for us today. I'm Elliot Schall. Thanks again for watching.